Hello, welcome to the first day of the retreat. I'm going to give you some brief instructions on the main two practices we're doing for the retreat. The first one being very basic pranayama, in other words, just following the breath. And the second being a bit more advanced practice, just sitting. So let's not waste any time because I want to keep these classes to about 45 minutes or less, because the retreat schedule I recommended for the full retreat is quite demanding, and the retreat schedule for the partial retreat, if you're working a full day, is also pretty demanding. So if you're doing all of those activities, I want to make sure that this is a digestible amount of material. So basic pranayama work. I just pulled this straight out of the course notes for the course. It's very important that you sit still. So when you're trying to cultivate concentration, if you're wiggling around and trying to find the perfect position for your neck and getting rid of that one spot in your back and trying to figure out how you can lean this way or that way so that your legs don't fall asleep, you'll never develop concentration. You will wiggle, you'll sit there wiggling around for decades. So it's extremely important right from the outset that you develop strong mental quality of being able to sit still, completely still. You don't move even in a fraction of a centimeter. Just the effort to do that, of course you'll end up moving involuntarily, which is fine. But if there's some corner of your mind that's going, okay, I'm going to slowly lean this direction to get rid of that thing. Okay, that thing is gone now. Okay, now I'm going to slowly release my shoulder because I don't like my shoulder. All of that is stopping you from developing deep concentration. Extremely important, extremely important. Do not neglect this piece of the advice. So, next, very simply, when you sit down on the cushion, there's sort of two ways to do it. The most direct, most sort of profound way to do it is you sit down, you set your posture. If you need to rock a little bit or sort of go in a circle with the body from the hips, right? So this stays in the same alignment, the whole spine, but you just kind of circle until you end up in the center point. Or if you need to rock forward and back and then sort of just release and see where the body ends up, right? So the body sways back and forth until it gets to where it needs to be. And then maybe just go through the body once, boom, 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 relax down. And then you're set, right? Once the posture is set for 5 minutes, which is nothing, do not move the posture, period. It doesn't matter how much it hurts. It doesn't matter how uncomfortable you feel. It doesn't matter how much it starts to burn. You're not going to permanently damage yourself in 5 minutes. Yeah. So I also recommend setting a very gentle alarm, right? So if you set a very gentle alarm, then you know, okay, I'm not going to oversit. I'm not going to undersit. This is very important. The goal with this practice is quality, very, very high quality. So basically what's recommended in the great meditation text written by Lama Tsongkhapa is to sit with great quality for very short periods of time. And if you want to do more, to do more sessions that are short and high quality. This is because in the beginning, if you sit for long periods of time, very often you sort of lose effort, and at some point you're doing this sort of half effort, half in it, half out of it thing, and you're creating a habit that isn't meditation and isn't in the continuum of getting to a meditative state. It may be relaxing because you're more relaxed than you normally would be, but it's not in the continuum of meditation. Now, it's also very important when you place the attention on the tip of the nostril, you're not visualizing anything, right? You're taking your attention and putting it right here, or if you're breathing through this nostril, right here, right? Inside the nostril at the very tip. And you're holding the attention on that patch of skin. So you're not visualizing anything, you're not imagining anything. You're just sort of drawing a little circle around that patch of skin, and that is the only sensation that you want the mind to register. Everything else, absolutely everything else coming in through the other senses, even coming in through the tactile body sense, you want to ignore completely. Just right here, that's it. So then in terms of counting, you breathe in, breathe out, and then mentally you say the word one, and you visualize the word, the symbol one on a black background, a white one, right? So it's about here, it's about the size of your thumb, right, ish. It's about the distance of your arms stretched out in front of you, right? So one. And then in, out, same thing, there's two in white. And you say mentally two. And when you visualize the two and say the two, you should say it with full mental force, right? Two. Breathing in, breathing out, three, right? So everything should be done with full intensity, full focus, full commitment. Then you continue this from 1 to 7. When you get to 7, you turn around and come back. So you go 7, in, out, 6, and so on back down to 0. And when you hit 0, just rest your mind for a moment. Yeah? So just sit for a moment looking at the gap between the in-breath and the out-breath. And really, more profoundly, what you're looking at is the gap between two thoughts. So if you can get a state of mind that is, for just a few moments, absent any conceptual thinking, just sort of hold the mind in that state of non-conceptual awareness of this patch of skin, and then continue on, counting. Sensation, in, out, 1. Sensation, in, out, 2. And you continue that to 7, back down, and you do this 3 times, right? So in total, you're doing 21 breaths. And there are a lot of different ways of measuring this, but more or less, when you can get basically through these 3 rounds of breath, which will take you about 5 minutes, right? When you can get through 3 rounds of breath like this, then you've attained the really the first level of competency in this exercise, right? Probably somewhere around the second stage of training in mental concentration. And I may go through the 9 stages with you. I haven't decided. We'll see how we're doing on time. But in any case, that is the totality of that exercise. Yeah? You want to generate intense focus. So you should be sweating on the cushion from the effort, the intense, all-consuming effort to keep the mind on this little tiny patch of skin. Nothing else. In the text, this is called forceful attention or forceful placement. Why? Because your mind is insane. You can't tell that it's crazy because you're in it all the time. But as soon as you start to try to place your attention here with the full force of your being, you'll find that you can't do it, probably for even a few seconds. You can't do it for 7 breaths. You certainly can't do it for 21 breaths in a row without forgetting what you're doing. So this whole first phase is about forceful attention, right? This is not going to be relaxing. This is not going to be like, breath of fresh air. Now I'm just sitting here with concentration. Isn't this nice? No, this is going to be like going to the gym and just lifting the heaviest thing you can, right? Or sprinting as hard as you can from point A to point B. Or you ever been moving or helping someone move and you have to lift something that's way, way heavier than you normally lift, and you have to carry it up a flight of stairs or something? Think about when you get halfway up the stairs, how the intensity changes, because you can't let it go, right? You have to keep going. There's no way to stop, and if you stop, you're going to get hurt. So that full intensity of effort is what's required here. If you want to break this habit, which has a lot of momentum moving in the other direction, you need a lot of effort and intensity going in this way. Yeah? Okay. I don't want to belabor the point, but it's extremely important. So, how do you know that you've lost your focus? So, at this level, the primary problem is that the mind is going to want to jump off the object. But what does that even mean? The easiest way to think about the mind in the context of this phase of the training is almost being like an old style film reel, right? So like this. So an old style film reel, it has an image and then another image and then another image. You know, the equivalent in modern parlance would be your frames per second, yeah, on digital formats. So on digital formats, it's a picture and then another picture and then another picture, and there's a certain number of pictures in each second of time. In any case, you can think of, in this particular case, for the purposes of this training, the mind being kind of like that. So the film that you're trying to record, if we can draw an analogy, is just the sensations here. And in between in-out sensation, just a few moments of visualizing a number, 1, and saying that verbally in your mind, 1, right? If anything else whatsoever appears on the film, it's not the film, it's some other film, right? You've somehow gotten something else into the view of the camera. So if sensations in the body appear, if you feel the pain in your knee, you're watching a different movie. If you hear a sound being made in the other room, you're watching a different movie. If you smell the incense that you lit at the beginning of the session, you're watching a different movie, right? And this goes on. So this eventually will mature into a state of mind in which the only thing that appears in your reality at that time is just this little tiny patch of skin and the sensations there. And that for 21 breaths, the only thing in reality that appears is just that little patch, and boom, 1, 2, 3, and so on, and then back down. And that will happen 3 times, and nothing else whatsoever will happen in reality. This also means that your mind shouldn't generate thoughts, because if you're holding the mind here, and then besides generating the image of 1 and mentally saying the word 1, if an image of the understanding of what love means occurs in your mind, you've lost the film. This is the film you were working on. If some memory from yesterday shows up when you were watching this film yesterday, you've lost the film because you're watching a movie about you doing this yesterday. You see it? So I find this analogy quite helpful. If you want unbroken conversation, then every frame in the 60 frames per second of your mind, according to the text, there's 64 frames per second if you're not a realized being. All 64 of those frames should be the breath and the image 1 and the word 1 being recited mentally. That's it. Now, before you can basically, until you can accomplish that much, there's not too much else to worry about because your primary problem is jumping off the object to something else. There are two flavors of that. The main flavor is that the mind wants to jump to something it thinks is more interesting. It's called excitement. Um, it's a derivative of attachment, raga, where you're exaggerating the positive qualities of some thing or phenomenon or idea or whatever. So if you're getting sleepy, this isn't the primary problem. You know, in the first 2 years of training hardcore like this, you will get sleepy on the cushion. Even doing 5 minutes, you'll get sleepy. Um, and this is just something that sort of needs to work itself out of the system over the first couple of years. And then obviously if you're working, you've had a long day, you might be tired. Or if you're doing this practice late at night, you might just be tired for normal kind of natural reasons. But there's another problem that comes along later called laxity or dullness, where basically you generate some concentration and then the mind sort of turns some portion of its attention to the fact that, oh, this is so relaxing. This is so nice. My mind is now calm, right? And having done that, it then sort of slowly, almost like a cloud coming over the sun, it loses the intensity and the freshness and the sort of cognitive brightness of what it's doing. And so slowly the object kind of gets darker in your experience, and the mind slowly gets less sort of intense in sort of knowing what it's knowing. Sort of like the difference between, yeah, I mean, really the cloud analogy is a good one. The difference between sort of looking at your garden or your yard on a very bright and sunny day and then looking at it when a cloud rolls in and it gets dark and all of a sudden it's like looking at it late at night almost, right? But that's not the primary problem right now, so don't spend too much time trying to refresh the mind at this stage unless you're already quite good at concentration. Okay, so let's cover just sitting in brief. So just sitting is a technique that's found all over the place. You find it in Hindu practices, you find it in Buddhist practices, Taoist practices. It's all over, all over. And it's all over the place because it's extremely effective. It's also extremely difficult. So I'll let you read this on your own time, but that's where that's just an introduction on where these instructions are coming from. So the first two things to understand are fixation and elaboration. So before, the film that we were making in the 64 frame per second mind of the unrealized person was just a small patch of skin. Yeah? So we were fixating on that small patch of skin with a great deal of intensity. So fixation is when we pick out some aspect of one of the senses or one aspect of something going on with the thought creation process, and we just place the attention there, and it starts to gray out or reduce our cognitive attention on everything else. Does this make sense? Next is elaboration. So elaboration is when the mind starts to it generates a thought, or you have a perception of some object, right? And oftentimes you fixate on that object first and you go, oh, this is a beautiful cup. My grandmother had a cup just like this. Actually, hers had a little round thing on it and blah, 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 right? So the mind picks some object in reality, and then it starts generating a whole bunch of concepts that sort of elaborate and sort of expand on whatever this original thought or original object was. So just sitting is making a film, if you like, as we were discussing before, where you are just watching all 6 of your sense doors and all 10 of the directions. So you are just watching all of your vision, right? Including your peripheral vision. You are just watching your hearing. You are just watching your taste. You are just watching your smell. You are just watching bodily sensation. You are just watching what conceptually appears. And you're not getting involved in any of it. You're an observer. You're an observer who doesn't fixate on any one aspect or any one sense door to the exclusion of all the others. And you don't elaborate on what appears. You just stay with what's appearing, right? So if something appears, oh, that's pain, okay, right? This isn't like mindfulness where you sit there and you go, that sensation is tingle. That sensation is warm. That's not this. That's elaboration. Labeling the experience is elaboration. You're just watching the experience. There's nothing else going on. And the way that you're watching can get quite detailed and elaborated. So I'll let you read these on your own. I'll let you kind of decide what level you can do this, but the most sort of easy or basic level is, for example, if I were just observing vision, then I would sort of stretch my attention and see, okay, the visual field upwards stops here, and visual field downwards stops over here somewhere, way next to me, right? And for this eye, the visual field stops here somewhere. And for this eye, the visual field stops here somewhere, right? And so I just become aware of both eyes and the full visual field that those eyes are cognizing, right? So having done that, I then, rather than fixating or elaborating, just watch the full field. So the film, if you like, the frame per second film, every frame is the entirety of what's appearing to the visual sense. There's no frame where I go, oh, that's pink. There's no frame where I zoom in on this piece and I only really focus my attention and mind on this piece and just kind of gray out everything else. So the mind begins to take in the full range of what's occurring in this sense. And then, once I can do that, then I add the hearing. And I try to add the hearing without losing the vision. And so I listen to what appears in the right ear. I can hear the blood moving in my body, right? Maybe I can hear the heart beating. So inside there are sounds, and then outside there are sounds. And so I become aware of sort of the full range of sound and the spatial field of the sound, right? So I'm hearing stuff to the front, to the back, to the right, to the left, up, down. And so I try to not visualize that spatial area, because that's a mental image, right? That visualization is a mental image. That's not what we're doing. I just make sure that the ear is completely open in terms of the entire auditory field. And with the left ear, I also, just like with the vision where I was going, okay, the vision kind of stops here, right? I just make sure that I'm not dominant with the right ear or the left ear, for example, and make sure that both ears are hearing what's occurring in the full auditory field. And I do that without fixating on the hearing and losing the vision. And likewise, if I start to lose the hearing because I'm focusing on the vision, I'm also at fault, right? And so you continue this process until you can also do smell and taste and touch without fixation or elaboration. So in brief, you can read a few more details here at your leisure. One of my teachers said I should probably make it a bit more brief. So these verbal instructions I will use as the brief instruction. But okay, so if you have some methods, for example, from Tai Chi or Taoist cultivation or tantric practice where you're working on the lower basin, or you're basically working on cultivating the winds or the channels or the whatever it may be, obviously you need to maintain those commitments during this retreat. So, when you look at the retreat schedule, if you want to take some of the just sitting sessions or whatever time you need to complete your other requirements, definitely do that. Don't break those requirements for the sake of this retreat. So, because there's one member of the group who really wanted to take up some purification practice. There's going to be some purification practice discussion on this retreat. So usually the purification that's taught first is Vajrasattva. And purification has 4 elements, right? You're relying on realized beings. In this case, you're relying on the Buddhas, yeah, because you have negative karma from the past related to basically rejecting the kinds of teachings that could get you out of the problems that you're in. And so this reliance acts as an antidote, the directly opposing antidote to those past tendencies. So then they also have until I'm enlightened, right? So until I'm enlightened. So the other aspect is that we have all these negative karmas in relation to sentient beings, yeah? So sentient beings above, below, to the left, to the right, front, back, all, the ordinal direction. So here's sort of north, and then we have these two, right, going here, and then these two going the other way. So these sentient beings in all directions, we have unlimited numbers of interactions with in the past. We have done everything that can be done, positive and negative, in relation to those beings. And so in part, you want to generate a motivation that you're going to basically do whatever you can to help them achieve actual happiness, right? Actual fulfillment, the fulfillment of a mind that is fully at peace, fully realized, and to bring them to their full potential. So in this case, that means the omniscience of a Buddha, right? So you're trying to generate this intention to bring them to the highest possible welfare and benefit. So this acts as a directly opposing antidote to countless lifetimes where we have basically said, screw all sentient beings, I want my highest benefit. You see it? And out of that intent, I'm going to do this because this is what's good for me. You have harmed everyone in every conceivable way. So this is the opposite of that. You're saying, I'm going to help everyone in every conceivable way. Whether they need temporary help or they need the ultimate help of gaining freedom or full awakening, omniscience. So that's what this first component is about, right? This is adopted from some tantric stuff. And if you'd like to do this portion, you can. But the most basic practice is you visualize Vajrasattva, who's this fine enlightened gentleman here. You visualize Vajrasattva 4 inches above your head. He's sitting on a lotus here, and I believe that he's also sitting on a moon disk. And he has a Vajra in his right hand and a bell in his left hand. Yeah? And then he has a crown that has 5 stones in it, 5 precious stones. And he's sitting in this full lotus posture. Okay. So you visualize him there. You start with the lotus, then the moon disk, and then you visualize him on top of those. He's facing the same direction as you. Um, and then basically you follow these steps. And if you don't know what some of the terms mean, that's okay. Okay, so the power of regret, right? Karma has several aspects, several facets, right? So one of the facets of karma is that, to give you a practical example, when you were younger, you may have tried to steal something, right? Maybe you stole some money from your parents' purse, your mom's purse, or maybe you stole candy from a store or something. If you get away with it, then you form this feeling, right? Where you go, oh yeah, I got it, and I got the candy, I got the thing I wanted. And a component of that is that you go, I'm going to do this again. I got what I wanted, you know? What's the downside to this? And regret is not guilt, right? Guilt is, oh, I'm a terrible person. No, that's not what we're talking about. Regret is looking at a negative action and going, that harmed someone else, right? Not only that, but due to karma, this action will cause me suffering. If I stole, then in my next life, my body might not function properly. Some of my organs and so forth may not be functioning the way that they should. In other words, I don't have the resources that I need. Why? Because I took resources from others in the past. And you'll find yourself in situations where no matter how hard you work, no matter what you do, you can't get the money that you need to live and function. You may find yourself in environments where people encourage you to steal. And once again, you see stealing as a good thing. So regret in this case is the directly opposing force that is going, no, this was a terrible thing. This was not a good thing. And then the resolve is the thing going, I'm not going to do this again. Now, of course, at the level of the resolve, you don't want to promise to stop doing things you're not going to do. There's a Buddha here who's trying to help you out and to give you some extra juice to try to purify your negative deeds. You don't want to tell this Buddha, oh, by the way, yeah, I'll never kill again. If you will kill again at some point because it's part of your work or whatever, then don't make promises you can't keep. But you can say that I'm going to do everything I can not to kill, right? And I'm going to deliberately work towards removing all kinds of killing from my life as quickly as I can. Things like this. And then, of course, the power of the antidote. So the antidote in this case is, actually in all cases, is doing some type of virtuous activity. So in this case, the virtuous activity is the recitation of Vajrasattva's mantra. And I will give you the transmission of this right now, I think. So a mantra is said with a particular tune, right? It's almost sung, and that's an important component of the mantra recitation. So, Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Teno Patita Dido Mea Bhava Suto Kayo Mea Bhava Supo Kayo Mea Bhava Anorakto Mea Bhava Sawa Siddhi Mitrayasa Sawa Kama Sutra Me Titam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawa Tata Gata Vajra Mame Mutsa Vajra Bhava Mahasamaya Sapa Ahom Pi. Now, if you were going to recite 21, you would say Ahum Pid Om Vajrasattva, like that. And you continue on, you do 21, and then at the end, you have sort of the trailing Pid, right? So, according to the texts, if you do this type of practice and you do 21 recitations of this with the opponent powers in place, um, then you can stop your karma from multiplying day by day. And this may sound sort of trivial, but I was talking with someone last night and I hadn't done the math myself. You know, I had sort of heard, oh yeah, it multiplies a lot and blah, blah, blah. But basically, in the text, they say, um, let's say that you killed a mouse. You killed a mouse today. And you might think, well, in the course of my life, I did all these other good things and, you know, what have you. This is sort of trivial. The trouble is that karma is sort of like a seed. So if you plant an acorn today and it grows and grows and grows and grows, in 1,000 years that acorn will be a tree that could cover 100 chariots. You know, it could provide shade to 100 chariots, 100 Bentleys or whatever. And not only that, it's going to drop millions of seeds, right? And exactly the same way, your negative actions, they have the potential to cause you to do the same type of action again, as we just discussed. So from that action, new seeds will be formed, and therefore more trees will spring up, and suddenly you have an entire forest of oak trees, right? Relatively suddenly. So I did the math yesterday, and if you basically karma doubles each day. So if you killed one mouse today, it doubles tomorrow and doubles again the next day and so on. So it goes from 1 to 2 to 4. And by the end of the month, just 1 month, it is as though you have killed over 500 million mice. So it's very important that we learn about karma and that we learn to minimize the negative aspects of our actions. And that when we do negative things, in particular if we feel we kind of have to do them for our career or whatever, uh, that we purify those things the same day. Because oh man, it just grows and grows. Uh, and because our virtue, our habit of virtue is not so strong, then this increases the likelihood that at the end of our life, there's only going to be negative actions that are very powerful negative actions sitting in our mental continuum, which is not a very good situation. So I think that will do for this session. Let us do the first 5-minute session. I'm not going to be joining you for all the 5-minute sessions. You need to manage those on your own. Work them into your schedule. I gave you sort of a schedule that you can work from if you're not sure how to divide up your time. So those are going to be on your own, unless we're doing one in class. So since I already provided the instructions, let's just give it a go. So first, if you have some prayers that you say already, go ahead and say those. Otherwise, you can uh, you can do sort of the standard prayer that until I attain enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Okay. It's also good to do a dedication. So one of the traditional prayers is, due to this merit, may all mother sentient beings develop bodhicitta, which is the mind aimed at attaining awakening. And may they develop the realization of emptiness, which is the wisdom that liberates us from the most subtle types of cognitive problems, emotional problems that we have. So may the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. And may the precious realization of emptiness which has not been born arise and grow. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. Okay, I'll see you later on today.